Speaking of, I will find a way to connect this.
Uh,
Speaking of movies that reunite or that brought back aging stars into a beloved role,
there we go. Yeah.
Star
So
Trek: The Motionless Picture,
the
as
motionless
it's
picture.
called.
Yeah. Yeah. So I picked this movie up on 4K recently. I actually got the director's cut of it, which I had not seen since it was released on DVD like 20 odd years ago, and it didn't get a Blu-ray release for some reason.
Huh.
Yeah, but it got a 4K release, and I had not seen this movie in a very long time. Part of the reason for that is because one of the stars of the movie, the actor, is not a good
Oh,
guy.
oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Bit
Uh,
of the Hollyweird disease,
yes, yes, yes.
as I recall.
Yeah. Um,
And
but
just think, that guy was going to be the star of Star Trek Continues.
no, it's a different guy.
Oh, okay.
That guy, or he might, maybe he was. I don't remember.
I think it was him. The
Was it okay? Or are you referring to Star Trek Phase Two?
Phase Two. That's it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Star Trek Continues is the one with
Oh, that's the fan film.
yeah, that's the fan film with Vic Mignogna.
Oh, my
Um,
bad.
yeah, yeah,
Star Trek Phase Two then.
yeah. Yeah. I don't think he was going to be in that. It was the guy in that one. I think he was the Vulcan, and he actually has a small role in this movie. And but yeah. So if you've never, I'm assuming if you know anything about Star Trek, you probably know the plot of the movie. I won't go too far into it, but so the movie centers around this alien entity called V'ger that is on its way to Earth for unknown reasons, and uh,
Well, it's known reasons now. Now that you did your Star Trek audiobook a few weeks back,
oh
would be
right, yeah,
totally canon fan fiction written by William Shatner himself. It was a Borg.
oh right, yes, yeah. But so V'ger is well, mild spoiler. Actually, I'm not worried about spoiling it. This movie's 45 years old. Almost 45 years. Well, 44 years old.
Yep.
Um, so V'ger is a machine that's coming back to Earth to reunite with its creator, and the Enterprise, which has just been refitted, is sent to intercept it. Part of the plot is that Kirk, who's an admiral, uh, uses the crisis to get command of the Enterprise back from Captain William Decker, who's played by the aforementioned really bad guy actor.
Yep. That's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is canon or not, but I've heard that his character that Decker is the son of the Commodore from the Doomsday Machine, the one that went nuts.
Huh.
I don't know if that's canon or not, but it's just because they're both their last names are Decker. But Yeah, so they intercept the intercept V'ger, and then they find out, try to find out what it is and what it wants, and part of the plot too is Lieutenant Ilea, who's the young lady you see in the poster. Um, she's from a planet called Delta, um, and apparently the women on this planet have a certain effect on men, if you know what I mean. Uh,
Yeah. It's Gene Roddenberry had some weird things that occasionally came up in his ideas.
yeah, yeah. If you ever watch Chaos on the Bridge, Ira Stephen Bear, who I mentioned last week, who was the showrunner on DS9. Before that, he worked on TNG, and he was the one who came up with Risa, the pleasure planet. And he's
Mm.
describing it to Roddenberry, and then Roddenberry just kind of goes with it completely. It takes it even further, almost turning it into like like late night cable stuff. It's just like,
Um, uh,
"Whoa, okay, but but yeah, so
Look, he's a nerd. He's allowed to be unsatisfied in a little bit, Randy.
yeah, that's true. That's true. And I'm not one to judge, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, but anyway, so Decker and Ilea had a relationship beforehand when Decker was stationed on her homeworld, which definitely parallels Riker and Troy's relationship from TNG. Um, but yeah, and then V'ger takes over Ilea, turns her into a probe, and that's how they communicate with V'ger. Um, and then of course they find out V'ger is a was actually one of the old Voyager probes. Actually, I don't think there was a Voyager 6, but um, uh,
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure there's just Voyager 1 and 2, if memory
yeah,
serves.
yeah. But yeah, yeah, the Voyager probe ended up falling on a planet of living machines, which, as Stevie mentioned in Shatner's book, were actually the Borg, which yeah, that was,
Totally canon. Yeah.
yes, totally canon, yeah. But yeah, then stuff happens at the end, and then the day is saved. The movie, I think when it came out, um, it did get that reputation, as DB said, as being the motionless picture, because that is the biggest flaw of this movie, is that it is very slow paced. Um,
Right. There's a reason it got the motionless picture name.
yeah, yeah, because like I mean, the Enterprise doesn't get to encounter V'ger until about 50 minutes into the movie. And this movie's close to 2.5 hours. So yeah.
Now, is the director cut 2.5 hours or the base cut 2.5 hours?
The director's cut's almost 2.5 hours. I think the base cut's like 210, 215, something around in there. There's actually another version of the movie that I think was right at 2.5 hours. I had it on VHS when I was a kid, and that was the one I watched. And I have not seen that cut in decades. I don't know if it still exists somewhere, or if somebody has that VHS copy somewhere. Um, but yeah, it's that's probably like and the other negative with the movie is the focus on Decker and Ilea a little too much, and not necessarily enough on the cast of the original series.
Right. Which, with hindsight, with it trying to be the backdoor pilot for what would have been a new series that just never happened,
Yeah, that's true.
that makes enough sense.
Yeah,
Actually, in a way, it's what a lot of people have been advocating that the Star Wars sequels should have been. Like where
yeah,
the existing cast still had an impact on the plot, but with the newbies taking a bigger role over time.
right. Yeah, yeah. Ninja said he heard it was called the slow motion picture. Yeah, I mean it. I mean there are definitely some parts in there where there were like, well, okay. For one of the things too with this movie was that it went way over budget, um,
Yeah.
and so all those visual effects that they did for it. I mean, they really needed to show that off because they had to justify the amount of money they spent on it. Um, but I think this movie it picks up in the third act, and I think that's where yeah, and it just says it's trying to be like 2001: Space Odyssey. Yeah, it was trying to be more like that and less like Star Wars, because a big reason this movie got made was because of Star Wars, the success of Star Wars, and then Paramount was like, hey, don't we own something kind of like that? um, but yeah, it picks up near the end, especially when it starts getting more philosophical. Um, And actually, the philosophy with it reminded me a lot of Ghost in the Shell, and V'ger kind of reminds me of the Puppet Master.
Right, where it has like an existential crisis because it's like, what is my geez,
Right.
stupid meme brain. I'm thinking of the Rick and Morty. What is my
It's my
purpose?
purpose. You pass butter.
Dear
Oh my
God.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah. but yeah, and also the fact that it merges with a human. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, but this is I think this movie is better than a lot of people give it credit. A lot of people think, and people give it credit for. It's it's not the action heavy Star Trek that you used to seeing with the other movies, and it has the most Star Trek story of all of the movies, which you know it's unfortunate that this movie didn't do well enough because I think more Star Trek movies probably should be more Star Trekky.
That's a fair point. Where yeah, the other Star Trek movies are weirdly they're more action and character oriented, as I would say.
Yeah, yeah,
Not nearly.
like two and three are like space adventures. Star Trek 4 is like a time travel comedy. Um,
We don't talk about five.
we don't talk about
Yeah,
5.
I gotta say, five was trying to be philosophical, but Shatner didn't quite have it in him
Yeah, yeah,
to actually have something to say.
yeah.
S- You know,
S-
six might be the one that's the closest to this one in depth, just because of
yeah,
like the political allegory
right. Yeah,
and the moral questions behind it.
yeah, and then of course then like the next generation movies were definitely all
Oh
space.
God,
They were all space adventure action movies
yeah,
for the most part.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but
So now,
yeah.
what do you think? What do you think they added in the director's cut that gave another 15 minutes?
So there were a few additional scenes that they put in. Like when Bones first arrives on the Enterprise, Kirk talks to a yeoman and he asks her like, "Well, what happened with the crew member who didn't beam up?" And she mentioned, she said, "Well, he wanted us to go first to see how it scrambled our molecules because for those of you who know your Trek lore, Bones hates transporters." Um,
Oh God, yeah, that's right. This movie has the most horrifying transporter incident ever.
yeah, yes, yeah. um, uh, It's hard to believe this movie got a G rating when it first came out.
We coddle children today.
Yeah, we do. We do.
Well,
And
it's weird. We've gone from a G rating being general audience, so more people will come to in like the modern day G rating is almost a this is going to be for the smallest of children. Stay away.
yeah, yeah. The big thing that they did though was they upgraded all of the special effects, or most of the special effects.
Kind of like they did for the reworking of the original in Next Generation.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Um, although I would say a little more, although for motion picture, quality, yeah, like you see V'ger like as the cloud dissipates, and you actually see the V'ger ship, a
Mm.
CGI version of it, and you actually see more of like the outside action from the ship, and yeah. But but yeah, I mean, if you get the chance to watch this movie 4K, definitely give it a watch. It's really good in 4K. Yeah. So yeah.